Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Clayton and James Show. My name's James. And Clayton on Monday revealed within 30 seconds with his first lines on Ross FPL Raptors FPL Therapy podcast that he's a single man. Single ladies, reveal yourselves. How are you, Clates?
Listen, when he gassed me the way he did, I lost composure. I wasn't expecting an intro like that. I lost composure. That's all. I'm
Yeah,
good.
your opening line was I should put Ross did a brilliant kind of script of who Clayton is. Clayton was a bit overwhelmed and said, "Oh, I should put that on my dating bio."
Mate, he gassed me up. I was like, do you know what? That guy sounds all right. Thank you, Ross.
There's nothing wrong with being single, by the way. I'm just saying, single ladies, it's time to reveal yourselves. I feel like Clayton is keen to put that out there. Are you keen to put that out there
I'm
or?
not keen. I'm living my solitude life, so I am all good. I just lost composure in a little second. I was not press resistant in that moment. That's all.
Oh, yeah, more of that on Patreon later about press resistance.
Oh yeah.
Right, this week on the Clayton and James show, a little bit of a wrap up of the FA Cup football and the fifth round draw. I've titled a little section, a little test for Clayton on some benching dilemmas for FPL for game week 25 because I think there's some are going to have some brutal decisions to make this weekend. Euro focus is on Fußball Club Bayern München. On this day, Clayton takes us back to a 9-goal thriller from 2000. But we shall start with a wrap of last night's Champions League football, which included, I guess, the latest Manchester City disaster class in how to blow a lead.
I think that's the thing. When Madrid got the second goal, my mates that I was with, they were all like, "Oh, this is gonna happen. Like, there's evidence of this." And I was like, "Nah, surely not." Because I actually thought City and spells did really well last night as well, and I didn't really see any signs of that coming. And I thought in spells, Madrid actually looked a little bit underwhelming and poor in periods as well, despite a really strong start. And I didn't see any of that coming, but all of my mates were convinced. And I should start actually before we get into the game with I said I nearly had a heart attack moment, didn't I, last night, where I wasn't sure I was
Off
going to be able
camera.
to. Yeah, not actual health. I'm
For those on
exaggerating,
the
but
audio, Clayton looks fine to me.
yeah. So we went to the pub to watch the game, right? And it was just one of them. My mates were like, "Oh, it's City Madrid, big game. Should we go to the pub?" And we were like, "Yeah, why not? Great idea." So booked a pub, get there. It was booked for 7, and they've got the end of the Brest PSG game on. Fine, I think that finished around 20 to 8. So ordered some drinks. I ordered my nachos, all of that, and it gets to like 5 minutes to 8, and they're not showing the City Madrid game, and we're like, "What's going on?" And
It was
then,
on Amazon, wasn't it?
well, we didn't know this. So we just assumed Champions League game, it'll be on in the pub. Just don't even think about the coverage or who it's on or any of that. And yeah, we're looking, and all their advertising is Juventus PSV. And my mate's on his phone checking the bloody BT, the app to see what's the schedule. And he's like, "Mate, it's not on TV." And then the other guy's like, "What? Is it on Amazon?" I had a little heart attack moment where I've flipping like it's easy to neck a pint and go elsewhere, isn't it? But I've ordered my bloody nachos. I'm not leaving without my nachos and loading it up on the phone, and then the lady comes over with my nachos. We asked, like, "Are you showing the City Madrid game?" And thank God they actually had it. So we ended up watching it, but there was a good like 10, 15 minutes. We were thinking, what the hell? We booked this bloody pub and
This
we're
is a
not going to get to watch
terrible
it.
story, Clayton.
No, but it was like I had a bloody heart
Go up
attack.
to the
And
bar and say, "Showing the City game."
no, we waited until my nachos came over for that. But no, because in my head, I'm like, in a pub, they're not going to have Amazon because it's a streaming service, right? But they put it on some box office website or something. Not
Yeah,
website,
but
channel.
they shows Premier League games and that, so I think most pubs will probably have it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I
If
didn't
you've
know
got a
that,
Sky package, like I've got Prime via Sky, so
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I just thought if you don't have Prime through like an Amazon app, then you can't watch it. So yeah, there was a brief moment I wasn't sure I'd be able to watch the game, but managed to in the end, and it did not disappoint. Although, yeah, I thought there were periods of it that were a little bit boring, but overall, I mean, with that ending, it was great.
yeah, I felt sorry for City. Well, I do. You do and you don't. They've obviously had so much success. You're like, yeah, fuck them a little bit. Um, but it's just a repetitive cycle problem that's going on. The team dropped, and I was like, oh, I maybe fancy City to do the job here. Now the team looked a bit weird, but suddenly I'm looking and going, they've got 5 out and out proper defenders on this pitch. Probably Stones is going in midfield, but we've seen Akanji do it. It'll be one or the other. Concerns about, say, Vinny Jr. against Nunes or Rico Lewis, that wasn't there. It was against Rico Lewis later in the game. And I just thought, yeah, do you know what? Suddenly they've got the team back. And then you looked at the bench and you're like, oh my God, look at the state of that bench. The amount of players they've got, like,
Yeah,
they're all back. And I was like, yeah, I fancy it now
me
because
too.
Madrid obviously had so many defensive issues going into the game. And I think in spells, City played quite well. But the longer it went on, the greater that vulnerability felt. And I don't think they have the physical capacity to play a game at this intensity and this level without having vulnerable moments
Yeah.
anymore. And Madrid just exploited it towards the end. I mean, the attacking form Madrid have got is it's outrageous, the speed they've got amongst them. Bellingham seemed to grow in the game. Like first half, it was kind of like anonymous. The longer it went on, the more like it felt like he's having more of an impact on this. There was also unfortunate with Mbappe's equalising goal, Madrid's first equaliser was, I mean, it's the greatest shinner of all time, isn't it? It's completely
Yeah. Something with
unsavable. What
Rooney's, isn't it?
proper shinner. It made me think if we could put a list together of the greatest shinned goals of all
I'd need to
time.
have a think because the only one that's coming to mind is Rooney's, other than Mbappe's last night. But I'm sure there are others.
I think that was on this day, you know.
Is it
I think
another
so.
one?
It's not the one
Van.
I've chosen, but I'm pretty sure when I was looking last night, I was like, yeah, I think Rooney's overhead shinner against Manchester City was on this day.
I feel like Van Persie's against Charlton was as well. But yeah, tangent.
Yeah, tangent. Great shinners. Let us know in the comments if you're on YouTube. Greatest shinned goals of all time. Um, yeah, they just began to fatigue and run out of legs a little bit. The strategy was obviously they'd played John Stones in midfield, but then lost to Kanji, so it was forced into a change. Aki, I guess, was a planned hour, and then Kovacic's come on. So I guess the plan was always to play Kovacic in the final half hour. We just look at, say, Madrid's second equalising goal, which Brahim Diaz scored, and I'm sorry, but I just think Rodri's just way more aware in that scenario. I don't think the goal happens. I mean, when it comes back off Edison, I think he's there mopping it. And it's little things like that, concentration. I think it's also born out of a lack of confidence at the moment. Like they beat Chelsea, and you're like they've won a big game again. They'll start moving forward in the right direction. Then they get absolutely slapped at your place from a position of strength, actually. When City equalised, I'm sure you must have thought, might lose this.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't quite lose, but I wasn't sure if we'd win. Yeah.
Yeah, and you might have thought it's in danger here. It's very much
Yeah.
in the balance. Obviously, then the second goal you get is a fortuitous goal that's obviously deflected in from a player whose name can't be mentioned. Then you take it away from them because the confidence just evaporates out of them. I'm watching De Bruyne last night, and I've said this to you before. I'm like, I want him to go.
Physically, he's done, isn't he? At the top level, anyway. I think he's still got his place in certain league games, but when you speak about City at this stage and the physicality, I feel like De Bruyne is kind of central to that in that theme.
When De Bruyne and Haaland end up as the top two, they cannot press. They are so easy to play against, and it starts from there. So then, when they do attempt to do it, they're late, and then when they're late, the space is in between the defense and the midfield. And as a consequence of a lack of confidence, they don't hold the line as high enough, so the space is easier to find. Then you're away, and you got these four fast attackers all coming at you. Kevin De Bruyne, is one of the best players this league has seen, or certainly at least what in my opinion, anyway. I don't like seeing that last night. I'm like, he's not got the physical capacity to do this anymore. No doubt, and all the technical qualities are all still there, but that's not the Kevin De Bruyne that is one of the most enjoyable players I've ever seen in this league. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't, but
Yeah,
I don't know why he started.
I mean, you get it in a big game, and to be fair, I do think in periods City managed it well. Like I do think, yeah, sure there were moments where they got killed, but there was that period where I want to say it was well, definitely the start of the game. I thought City actually managed the start really well before felt momentum swung a little bit to Madrid, but then even in and around that first goal, I felt like City were managing it really nicely. And then, to be honest, the period after the first goal to the equaliser. I actually found the game quite underwhelming in that period, but that to me is an indicator that City are doing well because that means they've got the kind of control in the game and everything. So I thought they managed it pretty well in phases, but there were spells where Madrid looked like they were threatening them out. And there was that 5-10 minute spell in the first half I think after that first 10, 15 minutes where Madrid just like that front four you talk about, they looked like they were going to get at him. Mbappe had that foot race with Diaz, didn't he? Where he was getting in behind and Edison came out, cleared it. There were a couple of
Diaz
other
was
things.
really good there. He
It was,
just kept running across him, didn't he?
yeah, I did think Diaz looked a little bit on the ropes in that period, to be fair, but yeah, recovered well. But yeah, that front four, and like you say with Bellingham, he just grew into it. So I do think City managed the game pretty well in spells, but then that second goal, the equaliser from Brahim Diaz, like you say, that probably gets avoided if Rodri's there. But I don't know, could Edison have done better? He basically just like it was a
Just kind of,
weird,
yeah, it was a weird height, wasn't it? It was kind of like
it
wide
was
kind of
it,
chest area, wasn't it? Probably thought he couldn't get his hand there properly in time. No, listen, number one thing is keep it out, I suppose, where it goes back to. Obviously, when you save a shot like that, you've got no control of where it's going back to. I guess to give City a little bit of credit, they've obviously lost to Kanji during the game was a real blow. Aki, I guess, short of fitness. I think if those two had been able to do the 90, we might be talking about a very different context and the result here. They also lost Jack Grealish quite early in the game as well.
Yeah, because I did
So
think
there were
Stones was
setbacks they
looking
had to
really
deal
good
with.
there. In midfield, there, even that, there was a period in the game where I thought Stones was central to everything. It's almost like you could look wherever the ball was going, Stones was always available as an out to then pop it off and this and that. And like, I mean, that's the position I play, so I'm always kind of nerding out looking at players in that position. But I thought he was fantastic in spells. And like you said, if they didn't have to get rid of sub Akanji, manage the minutes of Ake, if Stones stayed central in the position for the whole game, probably looking at a different
They
outcome. But
started with a
Madrid,
2-3 build, very similar to Chelsea, but against Chelsea, they'd pushed the fullbacks really higher. This was different with Akanji joining in from right back to join alongside John Stones, Vardiol giving it his normal gig and going beyond, and then having another midfielder, commonly Bernardo Silva, obviously dropping in shorter. And that worked quite well for him, but then obviously defensively it got pinned in later and later. And I think Madrid also realised the longer the game went on is City, the more you let them come onto you, the more vulnerable they are.
yeah, and I
And
think
they've got
that's
all that speed on the counter.
once the midfield pivot became Bernardo and Kovacic, that felt like that's trouble waiting to happen, right?
Yeah, what chance you give City turning it around?
Sub 30%, I think.
I think less for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big blow.
I spoke to obviously COTC was out yesterday with Johnny Pringle and Simon Bibby talking about City Newcastle at the weekend. We recorded Monday night. Johnny felt they needed a 2 goal advantage.
That's what we were saying, my mates and I last night. Yeah, I mean, never say never. You never know in knockout football, but yeah,
No, and
probability.
Real Madrid have shown the ability historically to let teams back in. Chelsea fans will recall Madrid, Karim Benzema got a couple of incredible headers going 3-1 up at Stamford Bridge. And then Chelsea went 3-0 up in the second leg in the Bernabeu. So Madrid will definitely give a chance, but I don't see our City stop Madrid scoring goals
No,
at the top
neither.
end,
That's the main issue.
unfortunately.
Got to say though, Haaland's first goal was really nice, wasn't it? Took a while to get confirmed, but it was
Yeah.
good.
So I'm glad to see fishing rod in hand because I'm not fishing here.
Come on,
I'm
I'll
glad
bite.
to see that semi-automated VAR is so much quicker.
What? Yeah, why wasn't that in play for that? Do you know? I could.
Well, semi-automated, yeah, it was.
Oh, was it? And it just took long.
Yep.
Yeah, don't know what that was
They
about.
showed a graphic at
I,
half time
I
of the
saw the graphic at
semi-automated.
halftime. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Good, that, innit? Was it 4.5 minutes or something? Was it
Something like
three
that.
minutes 50 seconds? Actually, I exaggerate. 3 minutes 50 seconds. In any case, come on, man.
That was shit. Yeah.
And I get it. Ultimately, I guess they proved to be the right decision. No one wants that, right? Three
No.
minutes 50 seconds for a semi-automated, right? So clearly that's not fit for purpose yet either. So yeah, I get that this was a weird one because they've obviously had to measure off the ball and whether Haaland's behind it completely.
Yeah.
But what are they normally measuring off of? It's the
It's the
ball
same
at the
criteria,
point
no?
of contact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Um, I did watch last night extra time of Nottingham Forest against Exeter after the game. Forest obviously heavily rotating. I put it on, and Exeter obviously down to 10 men, and you assume Forest who have changed the whole team, but have now got the likes of Gibbs White and Chris Wood on the pitch and a few others, Nico Williams. You think they're obviously going to get the job done with an extra half hour. So what a heroic little performance that was from Exeter to get the game to penalties. They had nothing physically left to give other than just hacking the ball away, basically. They did great. They absolutely earned the right to get to penalties. 2 goals scored by Josh McGuinness, who'd had to move from up front to right-sided centre back later in the game. I think he's played a number of games for Northern Ireland. I'm pretty sure that's right, and he can play both positions. Forest, I think, again showed that there's a bigger priority for them than this competition at the moment. And that's not to say as we progress further, and they've got another good time round five, as we'll talk about in a second, that they may begin to pick stronger and stronger teams. But that opportunity for Forest and Champions League football is staring them in the face. And if they get, as I keep
Absolutely.
saying, they get through these next sort of three or four games, and they're still in a strong position, I think they'll do it. I think they'll do it in the running. Could you trust them way more than City? I mean that at the moment. It's not to say Forest are a better team than City. Just I'd trust Forest right now to get a result in a given game than I would Manchester City at this moment.
Well, and I
And
think
probably goes for Chelsea as well.
the thing you've said quite consistently is you think top five will be enough for Champions League football, right? So
Yeah, that
even if
doesn't change with that with City last night, by the way.
yeah, so you look at that, it's 4 points to Chelsea, but then it's six down to fifth with City and Newcastle. Yeah, I think like you said, get through this period, and it is on. I hope they do it. I just hope we don't get done on the way to them doing it in a couple of Wednesdays' time when Arsenal go to Forest.
Fingers crossed, sweetheart. Anyway, Forest won on penalties and took some very good penalties at the end. There was a lot of bantering on Patreon last night. Joe Whitworth was in goal for Exeter, who's on loan from Crystal Palace. You might remember him playing in an emergency a couple of years ago in a fixture at Brighton. And they're all taking the piss out of him because he's so short and he's 5'10". Right, this is heightiest, right? This guy's got like 6 inches on me, right? So
Clip
I
that,
think
Nico.
I think he's a big lad. 6 inches, a dream, isn't it? So FA Cup fifth round draw. We said on Monday's Chip Strategy podcast we'd cover it off, and obviously if there was anything that would change to projections based on the draw, I said on Monday that was unlikely. It was pretty much guaranteed with this draw because it almost looks like someone's rigged it.
Such is convinced. So I'm halfway through the main pod from Monday.
Such in his gloves. I mean, it's not right. It's balls in a bag. Okay. So the FA Cup draw, we have 1-0 championship ties, Preston against Burnley. A remarkable statistic on these two clubs. They were obviously founding members of the Football League back in the 1880s. And obviously, you have a bit of a local rivalry. You don't like each other either. You got sort of Blackpool, Blackburn also in that region. Preston and Burnley don't like each other. This will be the first time they've ever met in the FA Cup,
Wow. I
which is
wonder.
incredible. The amount of times they would have played each other. I don't know how many it is, but it's going to be well in excess of 100, if not 150 times they'd
Yeah.
have played each other, I thought. Aston Villa's reward for beating Tottenham, I'm not sad, is a home tie against Cardiff City, which probably would have been the tie I'd have handpicked most. Good tie for Villa. Crystal Palace at home to Millwall. They met in an FA Cup third round match at the Den a couple of years ago. You might remember Michael Elise kicking bottles off the pitch. There's a little bit of a rivalry there. Palace will obviously be strong favourites. Manchester United against Fulham is probably the most difficult tie to call. Fulham, well capable of going to United, and I guess will feel very aggrieved with what happened in the quarterfinal. Was it last year or the year before? I think it's a year before, isn't it? When remember Mitrovic shoved the ref, didn't they? And ended up with a big ban.
Yeah, I can't
So the
remember when
game,
that would have
Fulham
been.
were winning 1-0 and it went like in a moment, handball on the line, red card, Mitrovic pushing the ref, it disintegrated in seconds for them. So Fulham will fancy their chances going there. I imagine they'd pick quite a strong team. Newcastle against Brighton. Brighton did win at St James's earlier this season in the league. Bournemouth are at home to Wolves. Bring back memories of Justin Kluivert's hat trick of penalties. Manchester City host Plymouth. Plymouth's reward, obviously, for beating Liverpool, I guess, is in theory the biggest tie that they could have had. City will be pretty happy with that. And Forest know, having dispensed of Exeter last night, they'll face Ipswich Town at home. Ipswich also rotated quite a bit at the weekend at Coventry, and I suspect those two teams probably will continue to do so when they meet each other. But if you'd have said to me pre-draw, predict the 8 teams that will reach the quarterfinals, on paper now, probably looking at sort of 6 of them.
Yep.
I mean,
It,
Brighton and Fulham would be the two that would maybe drop out. So in terms of projections for double game weeks, blanks around the 33, 34 period, as it stands, nothing changes. And in the circumstance where, say, Fulham did win at Manchester United, for example, as long as Bournemouth beat Wolves, I think that'd probably still remain in place. Obviously, if Brighton win at Newcastle, then that changes the game. I'd say it's just worth noting that the fixtures obviously can have a greater impact now by virtue of teams potentially getting to an FA Cup semi-final. So Forest are due to play Brentford at home in 34. Obviously, Brentford went out in the third round. Obviously, Forest have got a good home draw. They'd be fancied to go through. It only then requires them to be drawn at home to someone else weaker in round six, and then the projection is going to change. Um, Brighton obviously have West Ham at home. If they did beat Newcastle, the projection would probably change to put them in place. Fulham are scheduled to play at Southampton in game week 34. Crystal Palace are scheduled to play at Arsenal, and that's the biggest one that is potentially going to affect a little bit of strategy in terms of my potential play. Because if Palace made the semi-final and the fixture with Arsenal got brought forward to 33, which is what I think would happen, I'd possibly be looking at Arsenal and Arteta 31 to 33.
Okay. And what would the fixtures be for Arsenal in that period then?
So it would be Everton away, Brentford at home, and then double of Ipswich away and Palace at home.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice.
And obviously the Palace game would be just before Palace had an FA Cup semi-final as well. So bits of everything there in terms of projected goals and potential for clean sheets. You would, if Arsenal were hunting down Liverpool, I would expect Arsenal to put foot on the gas over those four fixtures. So
Well, we see we may not have a front three by then.
we will discuss that on Patreon later today. But what I can tell you is Clayton is referring to a potential hamstring injury for Kai Havertz. It's amazing how injuries can really destabilize a football team. Look at Manchester City and Rodri. Imagine having 11 injuries. Anyway, we digress. We didn't talk about Paris Saint-Germain, by the way, did we?
No,
I did watch the first half of the
I
game.
only caught bits of it because yeah, I caught the first 20 minutes, then I was traveling to the pub, and then I caught the final 20 minutes that was on. So you're probably better equipped to cover it, to be honest.
Yeah, front guys really, really threatening. I mean, Brest hit stop laughing, hit the woodwork twice in the first half. Once nearly with Hakimi passed the ball back onto the post. But yeah, the front guys were really threatening. Desiree Douy is a player who was linked with my team a couple of years ago. Young lad. He's a name really to keep an eye on. I think people might already be familiar with Bradley Barcola. And Ousmane Dembele has completely refound himself. Less responsibility off the ball. Really got confidence in front of it now. You and I had said we thought PSG would win there handsomely yesterday, and they did. If you haven't seen Dembele's first goal, it's worth a look. Not so much for the goal, which is very well taken. Just watch the crowd behind the goal. Really nice. They're all like swinging their scarves and stuff. The Brest fans behind the goal, and it's like no one flinches when it goes in. To just carry on.
Fair play.
There's no way any English crowd is going to
No,
be able to
not a
maintain
chance.
that. All the scarves are dropping, like gravity would hit hard. They just don't stop. They carry on.
I don't know if this sustained throughout the game, but in that first 20 minutes I was watching, I thought I really liked PSG's build up. Like it was the kind of standard 3-2 that you see with everyone, but like the personnel switching between the third on the left was really interesting. It was Marquinhos, Patro, and then one of Mendes and Ruiz, and like the way they were just consistently changing. And I think then one of like because that midfield three of Ruiz, Vitinha, Neves, they were quite fluid from again just the 20 minutes I saw, but constantly dragging players out wide to then facilitate someone else coming inside. And I thought that was really nice. And again, I don't know if that sustained throughout, but that's something that caught my eye from the bit
I
I
feel
saw.
like they've got an evolving identity where we're no longer associating them with Neymar's and Messi's and Mbappe's, and they feel more like of a collective team. I
Yeah, they
think,
do.
considering as well they were obviously in danger of going out, the dangerous team, and obviously they could walk into Liverpool's path in the last 16, which honestly it wouldn't be the given. In the past, you think like, yeah, but they'll be nowhere near good enough off the ball. Without it, they'll get punished by good teams. This team's got a bit more about it, I think, as a
Yeah.
collective. Quite
It's,
interesting.
makes me think at the time when we beat them 2-0, I kind of dismissed it. Makes me think, oh, it's more impressive than I realised, maybe.
And Borussia Dortmund were 3-0 winners last night as well in Lisbon. Absolutely superb result. Gerassi's headed goal was an absolutely fantastic header. And as you said, Juventus beat PSV 2-1. I want to move on to a bit of FPL chat,
Yeah.
Clay. So I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Go on.
So I'm
What
going to put,
am I up against?
I'm going to play a game.
I like games.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to play a benching headaches game because the amount of questions I'm going to get on my deadline stream on Friday night is probably not worth thinking
So
about. So you can do all the answers now.
I'm your guinea pig.
Pretty much. So I'm going to give you a succession of A versus B's, kind of winner stays on scenario here. And you're going to tell me which player that you would bench out of two players. I will start with this for you. Josko Vardiol at home to Newcastle or Anthony Robinson.
I would start Vardio.
Robinson's at home to Nottingham Forest, obviously.
Yep, I'd start Vardio.
You start Vardiol. Okay. What about Vardiol versus Daniel Munoz?
Vardio?
Munoz has Everton at home this week. You're still
Yep,
going Vardiol, yeah?
yep.
Even though you know Manchester City aren't keeping the clean sheet on Saturday.
Uh, I don't know that, but I think it's likely that they won't keep a clean
I
sheet.
think
Yes,
I think
correct.
I do. I'd be very surprised if Newcastle don't score. He's still going with Vardiol, yeah?
Yep.
All right, just for the record, Munoz or Robinson then?
Ooh. I would start Munoz.
Yeah?
Yep.
Home to Everton.
Ahead of Robinson, home to Forest. Yep.
He obviously was a goal scorer for Palace at Doncaster on Monday night. Okay. Milos Kerkez then or Vardiol. Kerkez Southampton away.
Vardio, home fixture.
Well, you're boring then, aren't you? Right, let's test you a bit more then. Gabriel or Vardiol? Gabriel away to Leicester.
I would go Gabriel there. Yeah. I think even though I'm perhaps contradicting what I just said about home fixture, I think Arsenal's probability of a clean sheet is probably higher than Man City's in that fixture, even if it is away.
Okay, so we take a step back. Kerkez or Munoz. So Kerkez at Southampton, Munoz at home to Everton.
Munoz. I'd play Munoz over
So
Kirkers.
your order would be Gabriel, Vardiol, Munoz, Kerkez, Robinson. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. How did I score in the game?
Now,
We'll find out next week.
the idea of benching these guys this weekend sounds ridiculous, but I think people will have combination of sort of like two of those three with, say, a Trent and be like, what am I, what am I benching out of this? All right, let's mix it up a bit then. So you got Gabriel top of that list. What about Gabriel versus Amad Diallo away to Tottenham?
Or I would start the attacker. I always prefer playing the attacker personally, so I'd go Ahmad.
Okay. Amad Diallo versus Ilman and Dye away to Palace.
Ahmad?
Still, yeah.
Yep.
What about versus Big Bad Birthday Boy Beto?
Yeah, Ahmad.
Why is he? Was it his birthday, by the way?
It was I think it was his birthday on like the Friday, the day before the game, the match day or something.
You had your cake and ate it, no doubt. Okay. Amad Diallo versus Anthony Gordon, if past fit, obviously, he's a doubt for Newcastle.
Gordon.
Gordon away to City, Diallo away to Tottenham.
Yeah, I'd start Gordon.
Okay. About your old mate, João Pedro, home to Chelsea or Gordon.
Oh, that's a tricky one.
These are all tricky, mate.
I say I don't think I've struggled with any of them until this one. I think that I forgot who it was. Was it Gabriel Vardio I struggled on a little bit? But this one, I think I would still go Gordon, I think.
Okay.
Only just so. That's like 51-49 in my head.
Okay. What about Gordon versus potential OOP Matisse Tell, who played up front at Liverpool, then played first 70 minutes on the left wing against Villa, then finished up front and scored late in the game. Obviously,
What's
OOP 6 million
what's your
midfielder,
minutes prediction for Tell?
90.
Okay, then Tell. Yeah, OOP, 90-minute man.
Well, I don't know
Give
if it'd
me
be
a better.
OOP, but it could be Son up front and Tell left from what we've seen
I
so
think,
far.
yeah, I think regardless, I'd go for it. I'd go Tell.
Okay. What about Tell versus Phil Foden, home to Newcastle? I was really worried for him last night on the penalty incident. I really thought he might have done a really bad knee injury.
Same actually, but not instantly. It was only when I saw the aftermath of like, oh damn, is that an ACL or something?
It looked like his knee went in a direction it really shouldn't go in.
Yeah. So sorry, who was the question? Was it Tell versus
Foden versus Tell.
Foden?
Okay. Informed Justin Cliver away to Southampton or Phil Foden at home to Newcastle.
Mate, you're giving me a headache.
These are about to
Uh,
get worse. I'm not joking.
Phil Foden or Phil or Justin Kluivert? Foden, just.
even though he's not a guaranteed starter and Clover on pens and playing the weakest team in the league.
Yeah, that's really tough. I again 51-49 Foden ever so
Okay.
slightly.
Foden versus Fulham's Raul Jimenez at home to Forest.
Oh, Foden.
Interesting. Foden versus Brian Bumo, way to West Ham.
Foden again 51-49, but
Really?
that
Over
feels
Bumo?
that feels so wrong. Mate, I think I heard you say on the main pod that if things align for people, bench boost, right? Mate, fucking hell. If people
Yeah,
have
but
these,
I think people have got some of these, but then they've also got like Fabianski and are like, what the hell? Or like Suja's
yeah,
got Flecken and Valdemarsson. He can't.
that is brutal. Yeah, no, I'm edging ever so slightly to Philip Foden on that one. But that feels wrong.
Foden over Bumo.
I know that doesn't sound right, does it? But like,
No,
I
no.
don't want to. I don't want to be.
Everyone on YouTube hit the thumbs down.
I'm being true to myself. That's what came into my head first.
Okay, Foden versus Nottingham Forest, goal machine, Chris Wood, away to Fulham.
Yeah, Chris Wood.
So you definitely go Wood over Bumo then, because I think that's one a lot of got this week is Wood versus Bumo. You're definitely
No,
saying Wood then.
I didn't say definitely, but I
Well, you
would.
said Foden over Bumo and Wood over Foden, so
Yeah, yeah. That
it's
doesn't
got to
mean
be Wood over
definitely.
Bumo.
I'm struggling with these, but I would slightly favour Wood over Boomer. Yes.
Okay, Cole Palmer versus Chris Wood.
Oh, fuck off. Jesus Christ.
Palmer away to Brighton, Wood away
Uh,
to Fulham.
I'd. I think Chelsea will potentially. Well, I mean, contradicts Friday night, don't it? But I think Chelsea will potentially get more joy against Brighton than Forest will against Fulham. So I will go Cole Palmer over Chris Wood.
Okay, Alexander Isak versus Cole Palmer.
Oh, Isaac.
I agree with that, and
Is that the only one you've agreed with?
well, no, I just would not be benching Alexander Isak under any circumstances, and I just know that people are going to, oh, Man City away. Well, I've got other players
Oh,
with good fixtures. Isak would not be a contemplation with kind of a free midweek. He played 90 seconds or so at Birmingham last week, so you
mate,
know
you
he's
saw what he
absolutely
did
fine.
to Saliba and Gabriel. Like, I would not be worried about
Yeah,
Man
this is
City.
what Johnny and Si was saying. I mean, even Johnny was saying that as well on COTC. Like, yeah, Isak. I think genuinely it might go for some people as far as an Isak versus Palmer debate. I wouldn't be benching either of them, by the way. I'd just be looking at alternatives. But I do think there's a lot of people going to have some absolutely mad ones this week. And that's why I said on Monday's pod, in terms of 2 weeks to consider bench boost, and again, it's circumstantial to what people have got, 33 will probably be the obvious one. But consider now, like if it has dropped your way and you're like, well, I'm a bench Wood at Fulham and Bumo at West Ham. I don't know, man. You're really going to find doublers that are going to be better than these guys with just a single fixtures. I'm not sure that you are.
What would be the defining criteria for you to edge someone in towards, yeah, bench boost works for me now versus saving it
I
for
think
later?
goalkeepers is important, isn't it?
Yeah, like you say, if a lot of people have got flappy. I mean, but if someone is in a position where they have got some of those dilemmas we just ran through, and the only thing they need to sort is the goalkeeper, is it worth then using a transfer to sort that to activate the bench boost?
Potentially, yeah. We spoke on Monday's strategy podcast about obviously you want to maximize the bench boost, but if it opened it up for you to be aggressive and use the free hit in game week 33 as an example, or use the assistant manager over there, almost what your gain would be on the bench boost, like how important is it? Are you what I mean by that is if you're free hitting in a double and you're like, I might put an extra 30 to 40 points on here, well, you're unlikely to hit that off a bench boost.
Yeah, and this is the fit.
Truthfully, you need
Like,
it to land so well.
and some of those dilemmas, like your Boomos, Palmers, Jimenez, and like you can see, especially like your Woods and Boomers, you can see 9 to 12 pointers this week, can't you? Like Palmer, I think is going to be a 2 pointer or a double digit haul, similar to Foden. Isaac Gordon, I think, will return. It's a tricky one. It's a real tricky one. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
tough.
it is, and it's obviously added in with obviously Villa Liverpool doubling. I don't suppose, but I'm not including Morgan Rogers in this because I'm sorry, he's got a double and he's
Yep, double
too
up play him.
talented. And the first game was Ipswich. Like, yeah, I would even play Morgan Rogers over all of those players that I've mentioned. That's not necessarily the case for some of the Villa defensive, by the way, though. Um, and a shout out to Gary Mantle reminding me, good shout because as I'd said on Monday's pod, I think it might be Disasai and Mings at centre back. Disasai is only 4.2. This is obviously dependent on his Reconsa's status. You haven't seen him play for Villa, and it's also worth remembering, subject to what you've got in the rest of your squad, he'll be ineligible in game at 26 because they
Oh
play
yeah,
Chelsea.
I didn't even think of that.
So, and their fixtures pretty much after it, which are not great anyway. So, I wouldn't massively be diving into that. But you could imagine as well, people thinking of buying Watkins, if they haven't got Rodgers, want to get it. It's very conceivable people are looking at their dilemmas like Clivert versus Bumo this week. Absolutely. And at that point, yeah, you should have a look around. I think if I was just a goalkeeper short, I would do something and think, does this make it better for me longer term as well? So say like Bournemouth have got like great fixtures. If you can go from like Fabianski to Kepa,
Yeah,
yeah,
and kept the
you
season
can.
through as well, to be fair.
Well, exactly that. Yeah, it's going to cover you all the weeks moving forward. Yeah, I would consider a move like that. If that was the difference, say, yeah, if I do this, I will bench boost. Yeah, I would probably do it. Yeah,
Is that the process you go through when you come to your benching dilemmas on the stream? Because I enjoyed that.
as in how do I pick the players?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I like that.
I'd start with the top games, so I'd start with Brighton, Chelsea, and I'd be like, who might be a deliberation? So like João Pedro and stuff. This week, yeah, I might even put Palmer on there. And it's like, yeah, Palmer over João Pedro. Next game, Leicester versus Arsenal. Okay, João Pedro versus Gabriel. Yeah, that is the process I go through.
Very good.
Okay, Euro Focus. Clayton was too busy telling everyone that he's single on FPL therapy this week. Shout out, Ross. Great podcast, by the way. Although the bit where you dug out Tottenham, I'd carefully remind you, what's your excuse as a Manchester United fan? How many injuries have you got at the moment?
Ooh.
Bayern, it's not like we're playing each other on Sunday. Shout out, Ross. Love you, mate. Bayern München is Euro Focus this week. Clayton's left me in charge this week. It's Football Club Bayern München. Did you know I studied German at school?
Did you?
Yeah, football and Bratwurst is about the only two words that I
Ha.
can I can remember actually. Um, Bayern, like many of these European clubs, guess what, Clates?
I don't know. That could go so many.
Gymnastics club,
Oh, okay. Yep. Of course.
like many of them. And in 1900, there were a group of them that wanted to join the German Football Association. They were not allowed. So, 11 of them left the room and they formed a football team there and then that night. Bang, done.
Nice.
And obviously, it's become one of the most famous and most historic football clubs in the world, but weren't immediately always successful in German football. In fact, their tale is not too dissimilar in terms of its growth to Liverpool a little bit. Because I think if you look at Liverpool historically, you're obviously a huge football club now in our country and around the world. Their history up until sort of like when Bill Shankly was in charge, quite moderate, in all honesty. Liverpool spent a lot of time outside the top first division. I mean, Everton was arguably the bigger club in Merseyside for the majority of the 1900s up until Bill Shankly took over Liverpool. And Munich were in the shadow quite a lot of their rivals, 1860 Munich. I mean, that's flipped massively now, even to the extent that when Bayern Munich moved into the Allianz Arena in 2005, it was originally to share with 1860 Munich. 1860 Munich are now playing in a 15,000 seater stadium. That's not what Everton have got coming forward for them at Bramley Dock, by the way. But the example I think is a little bit comparable. 1860 Munich were as famous in world football and certainly in European circles until Bayern Munich really hit the floor in the late 60s and then the early 70s, where they won three consecutive European Cup trophies. 1974 beating Atletico Madrid 4-0 in a replay. 1975 controversially beating Leeds United in Paris. Yes, controversially. Ask any Leeds fan about that. And they also beat Saint Etienne in Glasgow at Hampden Park the following year, 1976. They've gone on to win six Champions League titles in total. The most recent one, I guess the only one behind closed doors, probably ever. It was completely, before Chelsea fans get on my neck, completely behind closed doors when they beat Paris Saint-Germain in Lisbon during the COVID season. 30 plus league titles, 20 German Cup titles. They are one of only two clubs to win the sextuple. You know what sextuple is, Clayton? This isn't a dating reference.
What is that? Six trophies?
Well done. Yeah, very good. Yeah. I don't know why
What in
sex is six, but it
what?
is. Yeah.
What would the six be though?
So it's domestic league, domestic cup, Champions League,
Yeah.
and then
Super Cup.
before the end of the year, the domestic Super Cup, so it would be like our Community Shield, the European Super Cup, obviously against Europa League finalists, and then obviously the Club World Cup at the
Ah,
end of
oh,
the year.
fair play.
The other team to win it, do you know?
It's got to be like Real Madrid or something, no?
No, that's Barcelona, my friend.
Okay, not far off.
They've done that the treble of domestic League Cup and Champions League. They've done that twice now. Yeah, very rich football clubs, 33 league titles in all. Um, After the European Cup dominance, they did have a spell again where it wasn't quite as dominant. And up until the Bundesliga was formed in the 1960s, again, they weren't a particularly huge club by reference at all. And actually, when the Bundesliga was formed, Bayern weren't eligible to go into it in its
Oh,
first season. So they'd finished, I think the way they'd done it, because obviously the fallout from the war and stuff. Before the Second World War, a lot of German football was quite regionalized. So Bayern played a lot of their football regionally in Bavaria. You had different splits. Germany's obviously a big country. And then after the war, there was obviously a period, and then obviously it all went all the way up to obviously in the 90s. You obviously then got Western Germany, obviously formed after the Berlin Wall. But the Bundesliga was formed, and it was going to be, I think it was the teams in the top division plus about five or six from the second tier by this point. And Bayern finished one place outside. So they
wow.
weren't even in the first Bundesliga. And then you fast forward like another 12 years or so, they're winning the European Cup 3 years in a row. So it's interesting. We talk about teams and their timing. And so, like when the Champions League expanded to like having four places per teams who got in regularly then obviously got the success of getting money over other clubs who then didn't. But there's other clubs, yeah, and Bayern's a really good example of it, kind of coming to the fore domestically at the time when the European trophies were being formed. Obviously, at the point where Bayern win three in a row, the competition's still only 20 years old, right? As said, in terms of stadiums, they shared with 1860 Munich for the majority of their time. They played in a very small stadium originally, and then the Olympiastadion, which people might remember, is where England beat Germany 5-1, Michael Owen's hat trick, and also where the World Cup final was in 1974, was built for the 1974 World Cup, and the two Munich clubs, 1860 and Bayern, moved into that stadium until obviously then it was clubbed together to build the Allianz Arena for the 2006 World Cup, which is 32 years later. What they wanted to do was rebuild the Olympia Stadium, but the original architect had something contract wise where he had to agree to it and he wouldn't agree to the stadium being retouched. So the old Olympia Stadium, like many of the stadiums in Germany, you ever watch 1974 World Cup, or you'll know this, Clates,
Yep.
1988 European Championship, all the stadiums look identical. They're all like big bowls, one tier stands that go around. They've all got athletics tracks. You could be anywhere in the majority of them. The Olympia Stadium was obviously the biggest, but it had like a kind of a net. It looked like a netting roof on one side. The rest was open, had no roof. He wouldn't let them build it. The architect wouldn't let them build a roof on it or anything. So obviously, they wanted to move into a purpose-built stadium, and the stadium is now partly because of the 2006 World Cup. None of them look like that now. A lot of them are incredible stadiums. You never saw a stadium like that in the last European Championship, for example. They're all modern built, even ones which originally were built like Nuremberg, like to out. They've all kind of like closed in. Werder Bremen's another one, had a running track, was built with seats, and then they closed it all back in the 2000s. So one of have you been to the Allianz? You haven't. You went
Yeah, I went
last
last
year.
season.
Went
Yeah.
last year. The striking feature is obviously the outside,
Yeah.
but they can obviously change the colors. What do they call the fabric of it?
I don't know. But yeah, it's one of them when you get to can't remember what the metro station would have been called, but when you get to that station, you see it from a distance. And obviously, when I went, it was a Champions League game, so it was at night, and you see the colours from a distance, and it's like, wow, that is cool. And you get closer to it, and yeah, the kind of architectural design of it is amazing on the eye when you're physically there. It's a bit of a ball ache to get to in terms of logistics, though. You've been, right?
Yeah, I went in 2019 Christmas time when we went. The Christmas markets were on.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
it really
German
was.
Christmas
It
markets are
really
quality.
was. Yeah, more bratwurst. It
Yeah.
really was nice in Munich at the time. It was a nothing game because the two teams had already qualified for the the next stage. At least we didn't get beat 7-2 on this particular occasion, like we had done a couple of months earlier. Bayern obviously have a rich history of so many incredible players who hold a legacy, not just for Bayern, German football, and even world football. They have their own Hall of Fame, Clayton. Shout out here when you don't know a name. Konrad Heidkamp.
Yep, don't know him.
You wouldn't. He was a defender who played for them in the 1930s. Franz Beckenbauer,
I know him. I'll just shout when I don't know. I'll keep quiet
Gerd
otherwise.
Müller. Okay, you didn't
I
shout. Right, yeah,
yeah,
sure. Yeah, sure. Uli Hoeneß,
don't know him.
forward player in the 70s. Paul Breitner,
Don't know him.
midfield player, had a shot on him. Sepp Maier
Don't know him.
was goalkeeper, West German World Cup winning team as well. Hans-Georg Schwarzenbeck was a player I wasn't familiar with, was a defender. Was also voted alongside Beckenbauer and part of Munich's greatest ever team in a poll of 80,000 Munich fans in 2005. Franz Roth, also a midfielder, was a player I wasn't too
Don't
familiar
know
with.
him. No.
In the 1980s, you had Klaus Ugenthaler,
No, don't know him. I'm
defender,
hoping now I'm going to start recognizing some, but maybe not.
play on the right hand side. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge,
That name rings a bell, but couldn't tell you much about him.
very fast wide forward, mate. Into the 90s, Lothar Matthäus.
Yeah, know him.
Yeah, probably the standout player at Italia 90. Stefan Effenberg.
No, don't know that one.
You don't remember Stefan Effenberg, no?
No.
He was probably the standout player. I'm trying to check, I've got my years right. When they lost the Champions League final to Manchester United in 1999.
Oh, okay. No.
Oliver Kahn, you'll know,
Yep.
who finished second in the Ballon d'Or voting to who in 2001?
2001. Was that Michael Owens? Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Mehmet Scholl.
I don't think I know that name, but it kind of sounds
I
familiar.
think he scored Bayern's goal in that 1999 final. Was that Mario Basler? I can't. He was a good player though, Scholl. He was the standout player in a really weak German team, as in the German national team in the early 2000s. It was probably their standout player. Vicente Lizarazu,
Yeah, yeah.
left
Fullback?
back, of obviously the French World Cup winning team. Giovanni Elber,
No, don't know.
Brazilian forward, scored a lot of goals for them in the early 2000s. He was there for a long period. You'll obviously know Philip Lahm.
Ah, ledge.
Um, I guess is the greatest example of a fullback converted to midfielder probably ever. Would that be right?
I
Probably.
think
It's
so.
got to
Yeah.
be, I think, hasn't it?
They've tried to recreate it with Kimmich, but it's not quite the same, is it?
He's the standard bearer of that, isn't he?
Yeah,
In terms of the
100%.
adaptation. And Bastian Schweinsteiger,
Of course. Yep.
who, as another one who adapted from this very fast winger in his younger days to become quite a dominant central midfield
I
player.
didn't know he was a winger, to be fair.
In his younger days, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Wide forward, yeah. And adapted to become a central midfield player, was integral in the German team. I think particularly the one that reached the semis in 2010 in South Africa against his performance against Argentina in the quarterfinal. Yeah, it's so good. Ran the game. And people, like, this is why player playing central midfield. And so when it dawned on people, it was like, hey, he's better than that. So yeah, I've had some incredible players
I'm surprised Thomas
in their
Muller's not
history.
on their Hall of Fame thing
He
because
obviously will be, but I guess there's probably an element of
oh, still playing.
he's still playing.
Sure.
Yeah, he's in terms of appearances for Bayern now. He's on a stupid number, isn't he? He's 700 or so, I
Yeah,
think,
that's
in
what.
terms of appearances.
Have you got it there to see if what the
No, do you
record
know
is?
what? I should have made a note of it,
No,
and
it's
I
all right. I can have
didn't. But in terms of his appearances for the club, a staggering number. Obviously, Vincent Kompany is the manager now. Took over from famous Cockney Englishman Thomas Tuchel. Previously, he'd had Julian Nagelsmann, who was somewhat harshly sacked. People thought, and obviously they didn't go on to win the league. Hansi Flick's doing a really good job now, obviously at Barcelona. Before that, Niko Kovac, who I think has just taken a Dortmund job.
he's Dortmund manager
I
now.
want to
Yeah.
say. Jupp Heynckes. Before that, Carlo Ancelotti took over from Pep Guardiola, and obviously Heynckes was in charge before Guardiola took over. And I think that was probably the best version of Bayern that I saw. Was the team that won the Champions League at Wembley against Dortmund in 2013 with the famous wide players Robbery and the
Yeah.
robbery
Robbery.
duo.
Yeah.
Robin, that's what they no, to be fair, that's what they called them. The robbery duo of Robin and Frank Ribery. really, really good side. I think that's the if you said what was the best version of Bayern you saw, I'd say it was probably that one. It's like a who's who has managed them. Louis van Gaal, Otmar Hitzfeld, Felix Magath, who ended up at Fulham, Giovanni Trapattoni, obviously Beckenbauer, Otto Rehhagel. I mean, illustrious names of people that managed them. They are strongly positioned in the Bundesliga this year, and you would imagine under company that Harry Kane, yes, finally, is going to get his trophy. So too Eric Dyer, not to forget him. We obviously covered Bayern now. They're playing Glasgow Celtic tonight, second leg in Munchen next week.
Obviously
And
covered.
now they've reached this stage, Bayern will be one of the top runners for this competition. No lack of talent, particularly in the kind of attacking areas behind Kane, Musiala, Lise, Coman, Sane, Gnabry, and I'm just not short of players who can play in these positions.
That's the.
Um,
Oh, sorry. I was just
Strong
going to.
defensively as well. Manuel Neuer is by no means past it, for example. Got a choice of defenders, essentially. You'll probably see Guerrero play left back tonight in terms of cover for Alphonso Davies. Like, he's not a bad player. They're a good side.
Yeah, it was last year when we played them, and like they weren't in their greatest moment in the period we were about to play them. And then when I got to the Emirates for the first leg, and I just kind of took my seat, and you looked out onto the pitch, and you kind of you just see the names on the back of the shirts, and it's like, oh shit! Like even though they're not in their greatest moment, there are incredibly talented and experienced names and players on that football pitch. And one thing that was interesting, actually, like you said there about the 1860 Munich, I remember when I was out in Munich last year for the game, was in the ah those beer houses. I completely forgot what the authentic name for them is called, but I was in the the
Ruffles.
no, that's Amsterdam. But yeah, I was chatting to these like proper old school football fans, and they were 1860 Munich fans, and like I can't remember the specific details they were sharing, but the hatred they have towards Bayern Munich, and like I remember when I was researching Hoffenheim a few weeks ago, I saw a brief section around fan ownership and Bayern, how like I don't know the detail on this, but like they may have unethically jigged the rules around it because it's the 51 ownership thing
Yeah.
in
The
Germany
50
and
plus one rule, yeah.
50 plus one, sorry. And I think the way they've done it, it's like they've outsourced 49.99999% to loads of subsidiaries and stuff like that, which equates to the sponsors. So yeah, it was interesting getting that perspective from the old school German 1860 fans. It was a great history lesson amongst 10 Steins, which was great.
They obviously have the rivalry of 1860 Munich. The modern De Classico is obviously the game against Borussia Dortmund. I guess that's Germany's most famous fixture now. But yeah, most of the country won't like Munich. It's fair to say. Their ability to dominate. I mean, until Leverkusen's title last year, they won 11 league titles in a row. Considering they won, I think it was what 33. That's a third of their titles done in a consecutive order. So there's plenty of other teams in Germany who won league titles, right? So that dominance is unhealthy, particularly in a league where pricing, we've done this before, the pricing in the league is very affordable. It's very much about fan culture, right? In Germany, it's why I really enjoy going there. Everyone's friendly and welcoming. Where I've been to different parts of Germany, that's
Yeah, me
always
too.
felt the place. It's always felt the way, sorry, when I've gone to these places. A couple of final interesting ones for you. The badge has these blue and white shapes in the middle. Can you picture it?
Yeah, yeah, I'm picturing it. Yep.
Do you know what that represents?
Not a Scooby.
That represents the flag of Bavaria.
Ah, that makes sense.
And it's another reason why Munich are quite well disliked. Obviously, they kind of like an ABU, like the any you might not remember this, the anyone but United mentality that was kind of there in the 90s. I don't care who wins it as long as it's not United, right? That kind of mentality, which obviously as a Tottenham fan wasn't the case because the anyone but was normally Arsenal. So I was quite on side with United a lot of the time. But Bavaria is considered like the kind of the richest part of Germany in terms of a region as well. So there's always been that of them. Plus, how they are on the pitch, it's like whenever you've got a player that does really well, even at say a Dortmund or a Leipzig, Munich just take them.
Yeah, there was that period, weren't there, where Dortmund were competing so closely, and then they
Like
just plucked Hummels, Lewandowski. So,
you
like,
could imagine hypothetical scenario here, but if Harry Kane left the club in the summer, the first place they might go is to Leipzig for Benjamin Sesko.
yep,
That's they do like if there's a threat there domestically, they just eat it up. Even the 2013 final against Dortmund, they'd obviously straight away they took Mario Götze and Mats Hummels, and then went back for Lewandowski as well, right?
Yeah.
So they ate
Savage.
up that great Dortmund team as well. So that's there's a number of reasons why they get disliked. That's some of them. Also, in terms of the kit, that's quite an interesting one because Bayern are one people probably notice is you can watch Bayern week to week. I'm like, hang on, what is their own kit? I've seen them play games at the Allianz this year. They've been in black. They've been in like this cream kit. We
Is it not
kind of
just the red one, no?
no, we associate them in red, right?
Yeah. What do
I
they?
wouldn't be
I
surprised
don't
if
watch
they're
all a
playing
lot.
like black against Celtic like next week. I wouldn't be surprised. They
Oh,
seem to do this quite a
never.
bit.
I've never picked up on that.
I think part of it is they don't have the color history like so many other clubs. So many other clubs are kind of layered where they'll have like a bit of their history and it's like, oh, in the 1910s, someone changed it to this, and then it's been like that for 120 years since. With Bayern, that's not really the case. Plus, it never kind of hit kind of mainstream eyes until obviously like the 1970s. But even like up to like the 1960s, they had white kits, blue kits. In the mid 90s, and then again at one point in the 2000s, they went to like a red and blue stripes for a bit. They've had years where they've had white as the predominant color. I think last year their home kit was white and red shorts. You were there,
Uh,
Clates.
yeah, I can't remember, mate.
No, don't remember.
I was not
But they don't,
analyzing the kit.
as long as red and white are in there somewhere, they don't seem to have the traditional importance to, Real Madrid's all white, Barcelona, the kind of the red and blue. Yeah, Bayern don't hold that in the same way. They just want to go, yeah, we're going to play in white this year with red stripes. They'll do that,
Fair
which
enough.
is
I guess they're
quite
probably driven
interesting.
by commercials more than anything.
Yeah, and one thing that's really changed for them over recent years is their targeting of America and Asia. So they've
Okay.
very much been targeting in terms of kind of eating up recently, kind of as much support as they can within Germany. They've realized over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, they have to think as a global power. And they are obviously one of the best supported clubs in the world, clearly the largest supported club within Germany.
Very
And
nicely covered.
And
Dankeschön.
I imagine, yeah, sehr gut. Das ist wunderbar. See, I did remember a little bit more. Also, remembering a little bit more. For those who wanted to bring up Franco and Real Madrid last week, we hear you, we see you. So just as promised, a money in football on that in the future. We will finish on this day, Clates, from 2009 goal thriller. Have you got it yet? Well, it's not much of
No,
a clue, is it?
I'm gonna need a. Yeah, I was gonna say, what kind of clue is that?
How old were you?
2000. I was born 95. Would have been 5 years
Game was
old.
played in London.
Okay. 9 goal thriller in London.
Finished 5-4.
Is it North London Derby?
No, why did I go for that route? No, that was 2004, sweetheart.
No, yeah, I wasn't thinking of that one. I wasn't sure if there was another. No, not a clue.
Can you ever think of any examples of players refusing to play on, asking to be substituted?
Not that comes to mind. No.
Okay. In 2000, in what should have been a kind of mundane Saturday afternoon fixture, West Ham United hosted Bradford City. West Ham under Harry Redknapp, good side at the time, kind of pushing towards top half, and had a lot of really good young kids who would go on and play regularly for England, a number of them. This was Bradford's first season in the Premier League. Bantams fans were not expecting to be part of on this day twice within the roundabouts a 6 week period. But yes, you've made it in because of this remarkable game at Upton Park, which didn't have a goal until the 30th minute of the game,
Wow.
despite the miraculous scoreline at the end. In fact, the most notable thing that happened in the opening half hour was famous West Ham goalkeeper Shaka Hislop going off injured, which meant a Premier League debut for young Stephen Bywater, who went in goal. And he could do nothing about Bradford's opener half hour in. Brilliant delivery from a corner on the right hand side by Peter Biggery. And Dean Windass, he of famous playoff scoring winning goal against Bristol City for Hull City in 2008, I think, if I've got my years right there, put Bradford in front. But West Ham would gain the lead before half time. Trevor Sinclair, playing as kind of an auxiliary centre forward here, was better in deeper positions, managed to equalise before John Moncur, famously of Tottenham. I was going to say famously, he wasn't famous at all. Formerly of Tottenham's academy, scored what I could only describe as a left-footed slide tackle from 30 yards that managed to find its way off the post. I say that because it's a great strike, but as he lets the ball run across his body, he lets it go a bit too far, so slides as he hits it. It's a great
He's
goal.
done well to get distance on it. The way
It's a great goal. It goes in off the beans on toast to give West Ham the lead just before half time. They can't hold on to it though, somewhat dubious penalty. And Peter Beagrie equalises from the spot. Full cartwheel and somersault celebration to follow, as he often did. Beagrie was a talented player, had a good strike on him. Evertonians will remember him well. Anyway, second half, Bradford go in front. Jamie Lawrence gets on the end of an error from Bywater, who fails to hold a shot, and Lawrence scores. Lawrence would score again 4 minutes later to put Bradford 4-2 up. Lawrence was very famous for the colour of his hair. That's what people remember him for. Any
what colour was
guesses
his
what
hair?
colour it was on this day?
My guess would be like red or something, but am I just thinking of
Spot
Freddie
on.
Ljungberg?
And
Hey,
I'm not talking ginger. Yeah, I'm talking like Freddie Ljungberg dyed
okay.
my hair full on red. He's gone for it. His second goal was a looping effort from the edge of the box. It might have taken a bit of a deflection, but it's not easy to tell because I think there was only two cameras used at the game. And it just loops over Bywater like really centrally. And he's obviously just had the mistake for the goal a few minutes earlier. So they're 4-2 down at home. And by this point, they've had a couple of penalty appeals turned down as well. And then comes to third. So Di Canio's been, in his opinion, fouled twice inside the box. I've seen the clips back. They're questionable. If they would have been given, I wouldn't have said like it's a bad decision. They were debatable ones. But the final and third one, it really does look like he comes back in off the left. And a lot of these clips are him drifting off the left hand side here. And he comes back in, he chops back off his right foot, and it looks like his foot just gets taken away. Classic one of he's planting his foot and he gets swept. His foot's got swept away from him. So he falls straight flat down, right? Because that's what happens if your foot gets swept away. Anyway, referee waves it away. Di Canio losing his nut. Literally, the camera goes to him. So he's obviously doing it. You know, Di Canio was one of them that had all the mannerisms and
Yeah,
stuff. He's doing
all the
that. He's,
gestures.
he's
Yeah,
going mad. And he's like, no, you can see him a little bit like the old Drogba. It's a
it's a
disgrace. It's a
disgrace.
disgrace. Like that. And then he starts running over to the far side of the pitch towards the dugout. And he's giving it the substitution sign, right?
All right, okay,
You
yeah.
can see it clearly on the camera. He's like, no, 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 take me off. It's like I'm coming off. I'm not playing. He's
What diva?
he's proper gone mental, right? So the game's continuing because Bradford have got the ball and they're attacking back down the other side of the pitch. And the Canios goes over to the touchline. He's like, no, take me off. Redknapp's like, come on, man, we're losing 4-2. You're our best player. I can't take you off. I saw an interview with the Canio. I think it was on former Palace chairman Simon Jordan
All right.
was in his podcast, and DiCanio explained because they asked him what happened that day, and DiCanio said that he thought he wasn't coming off as in like he was sulking about the refereeing decisions. He asked to come off because he felt that he was going to do something really stupid. Like if he told the referee to F off, he might
Like
get
get a
sent
red
off
card or something.
or
Ah,
something.
okay. Incredible self-awareness.
This is a man remember who pushed over a referee a couple of years. That might have only been a year earlier. Even that was in yeah, might have been only a year earlier when he pushed Paul Alcock over when he was at Sheffield Wednesday. So anyway, so Redknapp's like, no, like you're not coming off. So the Canio, this is why the game's going on. He just sits down in
Wait,
front
what?
of the dugout whilst the game's going on.
For how
Just
long?
not long, but he just sits down. He's like, yeah, take me off. It's
How
incredible,
have I
right?
never seen this? I feel like that's something that would get memed to shit
There's
nowadays.
loads of stories on this. You can hear like Harry Redknapp's accounts of this and other players as well. There's a good one of Rio Ferdinand. It's not like a modern Rio Ferdinand. It's Rio Ferdinand like back when he was young. It's like, yeah, he was being a bit of a melt and stuff. Like it's good. There's good content out there on it you can find. So anyway, Redknapp convinced him to carry on. A couple of minutes later, Paul Kitson's been thrown on. Paul Kitson, he who scored that goal for Newcastle against Manchester United in the 94-95 season after Andy Cole had been sold to United. Kitson gets thrown on. He's a substitute because he's just come back from injury. That's why Trevor Sinclair had been playing up front. So Kitson comes on. West Ham go for it completely. Take right back Gary Charles off. Kitson goes up front. They go for it. Kitson gets fouled. This is dubious. Way more dubious than the one with the Canio a couple of minutes earlier. Penalty finally given to West Ham. Frank Lampard's got the ball. Di Canio wants to play now.
Oh, I bet he does, yeah.
And the two of them, literally, they proper fight over the ball,
I
basically.
say
Yeah.
fisticuffs. Well, not
Lampard's
quite.
got it, and Di Canio is just trying to rip it out of him. I don't know who the designated penalty taker was, but Di Canio was the star, talisman, if you will. Lampard was definitely first choice by this point, and a really good goal scoring midfielder. But I don't know if he was in line to be the penalty taker. I don't know, is the honest truth.
So who took
They
it?
are they proper wrestled over about it for ages. Well, eventually Lampard probably thought this guy might punch me and get sent off. I better let him. The mood he's in. I think someone had a word and was like, "You better let Paolo take it." To be fair, Di Canio strolls up and he buries it bottom corner. Takes a great. He's proper nonchalant about it. Whips it bottom left. Scores 4-3. 25 minutes to go. Now West Ham are pouring forward, right? Sinclair, who's now moved into a wider position, gets out wide, beats the man on the outside, pulls it back. Joe Cole is arriving, equalises, makes it 4-4. First league goal scored for West Ham. Joe Cole was only 18, I think, at this point, and people already knew he was going to be an absolute superstar. The game is won 7 minutes to go. Di Canio gets the ball on the left hand side, does his usual feinting stuff, plays the ball back to the edge of the area, and of course, fittingly, Lampard is there, takes a touch out of his right, and bends it with left foot into the top corner to give West Ham a very unlikely 5-4 victory. I read a fan account from a West Ham fan who was at the game who said it was one of the worst games of football quality he'd seen.
A 9 goal game. The
Yeah, it was
worst.
like the football one. You and I have sat back and watched some things from around
Yeah.
about that era. We watched England Greece from 2001, and how it plays tricks on your mind. You're like, this is not how I remembered football to be. What the West Ham fan was saying, if you compared it to like modern football now, you'd be like, this, yeah, sure, it was 9 goals. It was entertainment, but the quality of football, like neither team could string like three passes together. It was all quite a bit direct. It got nice when Cole and Di Canio obviously got on the ball at the top end. But it was like, yeah, it wasn't a game that should have finished 5-4. It was carnage. Paul Jules said that he thought that it was the Bradford manager. I saw an interview with him where he'd said that West Ham was so vulnerable at 4-2 down, and the goalkeeper was obviously making his debut and had made a bit of a rick and was a bit of a mess. That rather than shut up shop at 4-2, it's like they're so vulnerable, there's more in this for them. But it backfired.
Yeah, big time.
And once Redknapp had bought on Kitson, they probably should have changed, and especially once it went 4-3. But even that period, like Dean Saunders hit the post for Bradford and stuff. They did have chances the other end as well. Teams for the record. So Hislop was in goal for West Ham. Back four was Gary Charles, who people probably remember most for being on the end of Paul Gascoigne's tackle in the 1991 FA Cup final when Gascoigne broke his leg. Rio Ferdinand at centre back alongside Croatian Igor Stimac. Scott Minto, left back. Minto does a lot of punditry stuff now, I think, doesn't he? Um,
I don't
does he even
recognize
does
that
he
name,
even
to be fair.
host? Does he
I'm not
host
sure.
stuff for Sky sometimes? I think he has
Possibly.
done.
That name doesn't recognize in my head.
Midfield, Steve Lomas won a huge number of caps for Northern Ireland, also played for Manchester City. John Moncur, Lampard, Cole, and you had Sinclair and Di Canio. The Bradford team had Aidan Davidson in goal, Wayne Jacobs, left back, Danny Weatherall and Andy O'Brien, centre back. O'Brien went on to play for Newcastle. Weatherall, you might remember playing for Leeds before Bradford. He scored the important goal on the final day of the season against Liverpool that kept Bradford up. Gunnar Haller, right back, also played for Leeds, also the Oldham team that played in the Premier League. Midfield, Stuart McCall, who people might remember famously for playing for Everton and Rangers, but I remember most famously for falling off of a car after Brighton got promoted because he was so pissed out of his head. Go and look for that on YouTube. Lawrence obviously scored the 2 goals. Gareth Wally, not sure if he was or not. And up front, Beagrie, Windass, and Dean Saunders.
Very good. I wonder if young Sudge was at that game. 2000.
I'm sure if he was, I can't remember him talking about it. I'm sure if he was, he'd have brought it up.
Yeah, we would have heard by now.
I
Yeah.
think so. That's a game you'd remember. I think I saw that West Ham during COVID did a vote of like their 100 best ever games or something. This was ranked about 32nd or so.
Yeah, I can understand
And
why. Sounds fun.
you'd think maybe it'd be higher, maybe.
Well, that fan account has dragged it down to 32nd.
Maybe a little bit. That's on this day from 2000. Thank you very much, Clates. As said, if you want kind of the Manchester City view on where they're at, obviously it was pre-recorded on Monday night, but COTC from yesterday with Johnny and Simon Bibby talking about City Newcastle from Tuesday night. I've also got Leicester versus Arsenal for you on COTC tomorrow with Sam Martin and Adam Pritchard. And Ask James on Friday is scheduled for 9:30 a.m. because it's a Friday deadline. It's also a Friday deadline next week as well. Clayton will be back with me for the Clayton and James show next Wednesday, which will include discussion, I guess, on Bayern Munich against Celtic. We've got a Monday game next week. I don't think we do we?
I don't know off the top
No,
of my head.
no. Right. Anyway, we're off to talk about Tottenham and Arsenal and injuries on Patreon. Be nice to each other, everyone. For those on YouTube, smash a like, hit the sub. For those on the audio, 5-star review. It goes a really long way. Cue music, please, man child.